What if a stranger's cry for help could drag you into a fight for love that tests everything you are? In the sweltering summer of 1886, under the vast, unyielding New Mexico sky, Caleb Sterling faced a moment that would shatter his quiet world and kindle a flame of hope he thought had died forever. The sun bled crimson over Copper Ridge, its rays gilding the dusty streets where tumbleweeds skittered like lost dreams. The town was a rugged speck of life, carved into a valley where the desert's golden sands met lush grasslands, kissed by sagebrush and the faint perfume of wild lavender. Wooden buildings stood weathered but proud, a saloon with a swinging sign, a general store brimming with hope, a church with a crooked steeple that seemed to pray for steadier ground. At the town's edge, Caleb Sterling's blacksmith shop loomed, its stone walls radiating the day's heat, the air heavy with the tang of molten iron and charred oak. Caleb, 38, and etched by years of toil and sorrow, locked the shop's iron-bound door, his calloused hands moving with the precision of a man who'd learned to trust only what he could forge. His dark hair, streaked with gray like ash, through coal, clung to his sweat-damp brow, and his brown eyes, deep and weathered as a canyon's heart, held a quiet strength. 4 years ago, his wife Sarah had slipped away in the night, her laughter silenced by fever, leaving Caleb to raise their daughter alone. He'd built a life of simple rhythms, hammering horseshoes, mending plows, teaching Emma to chase stars instead of shadows. On the porch steps, 8-year-old Emma sat, her auburn curls glowing in the fading light, her freckled cheeks flushed with focus as she sketched horses in a dog-eared notebook. Her pencil danced, tracing manes that flowed like rivers, her hum a soft echo of Sarah's lullabies. Caleb watched her, his heart swelling with a love fierce enough to rival the desert sun. This evening was meant to be ordinary supper of beans and cornbread waiting, the cicadas weaving their song into the dusk, the promise of a bedtime story under the lantern's glow. But as the sky deepened to a bruised purple, a shadow broke the stillness. A man staggered into Copper Ridge, his steps uneven as if the earth itself rejected him. His coat, once tailored and fine, hung in tatters, stained with blood that glistened wetly in the twilight. His gaunt face was a map of fear, his breaths ragged, and in his trembling arms cradled a bundle of baby, no more than 3 months old, swaddled in a soft blue blanket, too pristine for the man's ruined state. The stranger's eyes, bloodshot and wild, fixed on Caleb, and he lurched forward. Driven by a desperation that hung in the air like storm clouds, Caleb stepped in front of Emma, his broad frame a shield, his hand gentle but firm on her shoulder. "Mister, you're in bad shape," he said, his voice steady but laced with caution, honed by years of sizing up men in a town where trust was earned. "What's happened to you?" The stranger stopped a few feet away, swaying like a reed. In the wind, his breath reeking of whiskey and raw terror. "You're a father," he croaked, his voice splintering like dry timber. "I see it's your eyes, your heart. A good man. Please take him. Keep him safe." He thrust the baby toward Caleb, his hands shaking so violently the blanket slipped, revealing a tiny face framed by dark wisps of hair. The child's eyes, wide and dark as a moonless night, met Caleb's with a trust so pure it stole his breath. A small hand grasped his thumb, and a memory surged Ma as an infant, her gaze anchoring him through sleepless nights. "Who's after you?" Caleb demanded, cradling the baby against his chest, his instincts warring between compassion and suspicion. "What kind of trouble are you in? No time?" The stranger's voice broke, tears carving paths through the grime on his cheeks. "They're coming for him? For me?" He fumbled in his torn pocket, pulling out a crumpled note and pressing it into Emma's small outstretched hand. "Give this to your PA when they ask questions. They will. Tell them some men don't deserve their kin." His gaze darted to the horizon, where the grasslands met the darkening sky, and panic seized him anew. Emma clutched the note, her notebook slipping to the porch, her eyes wide with a mix of curiosity and fear. "Papa," she whispered, her voice trembling but brave, a spark of her mother's courage shining through before Caleb could stop him. The stranger turned and fled, his ragged figure stumbling into the twilight, swallowed by the grasslands. Swaying sea. The street fell eerily quiet, save for the baby's soft coo and the distant wail of a coyote calling its kin. Caleb looked down at the infant, whose trusting gaze pierced his soul, stirring a protective urge he hadn't felt since Emma's earliest days. The child was clean, well-fed, clearly cherished yet. The stranger's terror spoke of a danger vast and unknowable. "Papa, what does it say?" Emma asked, holding up the note. Her small frame tense but resolute. Caleb unfolded the paper with one hand, his other arm steady around the baby. The words, scrawled in frantic ink, sent a chill racing down his spine. Protect him from Varnell. Elias Varnell was a name that echoed like thunder across New Mexico, a cattle baron, whose empire sprawled from horizon to horizon.
Alice.
Whose wealth bought loyalty, and whose wrath buried men in unmarked graves. His name was a shadow over every saloon and sermon, a warning to those who dared cross him. Why would such a man hunt a child so small? Caleb's pulse quickened as he studied the baby, whose dark eyes held a quiet wisdom, as if sensing the weight of the moment. Emma tugged his sleeve, her notebook forgotten, her voice cutting through his thoughts. "Papa, listen." A low rumble shattered the dusk hoofbeats, fast and relentless, thundering from the desert trail beyond the town. Torches flared in the distance, their light growing brighter, sharper. As riders charged toward Copper Ridge, their silhouettes dark and menacing against the crimson sky. As the riders' torches burned closer, a question seared Caleb's heart. What secret did this child carry, and could he stand against the storm racing to claim it? The New Mexico twilight wrapped Copper Ridge in a velvet shroud, its streets cloaked in shadows as the last embers of sunset faded. Caleb Sterling stood on his porch, the baby's gentle weight anchoring him, the crumpled note protect him from Varnell searing his palm like a coal. Beside him, Emma gripped her notebook, her auburn curls trembling in the desert breeze, her freckled face pale but fierce. The distant hoofbeats grew louder, a relentless drumbeat heralding danger. And Caleb felt the quiet life he'd forged for his daughter slipping through his fingers like sand. Caleb's blacksmith shop stood resolute behind them, stone walls, etched with the sweat of years spent hammering iron into purpose. Copper Ridge was a fragile oasis, where desert sands met verdant grasslands. Its wooden buildings, weathered by sun and time, a saloon with a creaking sign, a general store where dreams were bartered for flour, a church with a crooked steeple that seemed to lean toward hope. The air was thick with the scent of sagebrush and cooling earth, mingling with the faint tang of smoke from Caleb's forge. The cicada song had hushed, as if the desert itself sensed the storm brewing beyond the horizon. Inside, quick. Caleb murmured, his voice low but urgent, ushering Emma toward the adobe house tucked behind the shop. He cradled the baby, whose dark eyes blinked up at him, serene amid the chaos, a tiny hand still clutching his thumb. The infant's trust stirred a memory of Emma as a newborn, her gaze binding Caleb to a vow to protect her, no matter the cost. They slipped through the door, the oak creaking softly, and Caleb barred it with a heavy beam, his movement swift but deliberate, honed by years of reading men and metal. Emma, with the quiet grace of a child who'd grown up without a mother, lit an oil lamp, its golden glow dancing across walls adorned with Sarah's hand-stitched quilts and Emma's vibrant horse sketches, each a testament to a life built on love and loss. Caleb moved to the window, parting the muslin curtain with a calloused finger to peer into the night. Torches flared along the main street, their light casting eerie shadows as 5 riders know. 6 moved with predatory slowness. Their horses snorted, hooves stirring dust that shimmered like ghostly veils in the moonlight. The riders' silhouettes were sharp, their rifles glinting, and Caleb's gut twisted. These were Elias Varnell's men, enforcers of a cattle baron, whose empire stretched across New Mexico like a dark tide. Varnell's name was a curse in every saloon, his wealth buying loyalty, his wrath burying dissenters in unmarked graves. A man like that didn't send riders for a child unless the stakes were higher than Caleb could fathom. "Papa, who's Varnell?" Emma asked, her voice a thread of courage, her eyes searching his. She sat cross-legged on the floor, cradling the baby with a tenderness that belied her 8 years. Sarah's death had forced her to grow up fast. to read danger in her father's silences. And Caleb hated how much she already understood. He knelt beside her, his broad frame softening, his brown eyes steady. A man with too much power, darlin'. Owns ranches bigger than this valley, controls towns from here to Las Cruces. Folks say he takes what he wants, and those who stand in his way don't stand long. He kept his tone even, shielding her from the darker truths that Varnell's influence bought sheriffs, judges, even preachers, that his enemies vanished into the desert's embrace. Emma deserved a childhood, not a shadow like Varnell's. The baby cooed, stirring in Emma's arms, his store-embroidered blanket slipping to reveal a plump cheek. Caleb's gaze softened, marveling at the child's care clean, well-fed, loved against the stranger's ragged terror. The note in his vest pocket felt heavier than iron, its words protect him from Varnell, a riddle wrapped in dread. Was the stranger a thief, a madman, or a father driven to desperation? Why choose Caleb, a blacksmith whose battles were with anvils, not barons? At the baby's trust, Emma's quiet resolve, and the stranger's plea kindled a spark in Caleb's heart, a purpose he hadn't felt since Sarah's final days, when he'd sworn to be enough for their daughter. "Papa, look," Emma whispered, pointing to the window, her voice tight with fear. Caleb rose, peering through the curtain. One rider had dismounted near the general store, his long duster coat flapping like a vulture's wings, marking him as Varnell's enforcer. He spoke to Old Man Tucker, the storekeeper, his gestures sharp, demanding answers about a stranger's path. The other riders fanned out, their torches illuminating the saloon's faded sign, the church's leaning steeple, the livery stables. Dark maw. They moved with purpose, not passing through, but hunting, their rifles ready. Caleb's pulse quickened. Varnell's men didn't ride this far for nothing, and the baby in Emma's arms was no ordinary child. Caleb's mind churned. The stranger had seen something in him, a father's heart, a protector's soul. But why entrust a child to a man whose greatest victories were shoeing horses and mending plows? Caleb was no gunslinger, no hero, just a widower who'd hung up his colt after Sarah's funeral, vowing to keep Emma safe from the world's cruelties. Yet the baby's innocence, Emma's courage, and the note's cryptic warnings stirred a resolve deep within him, a vow to honor the trust placed in his hands, even if it meant facing a titan like Varnell. "Papa, what do we do?" Emma asked, her voice steady despite the tremor in her small frame. The baby nestled against her chest. Caleb stood, his jaw tight, tucking the note deeper into his vest. His hand brushed the colt at his hip, its weight a reminder of a life he'd left behind. "We keep him safe, darlin'. That's our job now." He met her gaze, seeing Sarah's fire in her eyes, and felt a surge of pride. Emma was his strength, his reason, and he'd face any storm to protect her and the child they'd been given. Outside, boots crunched on the gravel path, deliberate and heavy, drawing closer to their door. A shadow loomed, tall and unyielding, and a fist pounded against the wood, sound echoing like a judge's gavel in the stillness of the night, as the knock reverberated. Caleb braced for the truth. Could he shield this child from Varnell's wrath, or would the desert swallow their hope? The New Mexico night pressed against Copper Ridge, silence shattered by a heavy knock that echoed through Caleb Sterling's adobe home. Inside, the oil lamp's flicker cast trembling shadows on Sarah's quilts, where Emma sat, cradling a stranger's baby, her auburn curls framing a face fierce with courage. Caleb stood by the door, the note protect him from Varnell burning in his vest, his hand hovering near the colt he'd sworn never to draw again. As the baby's dark eyes met his, Caleb felt a vow forming, one that could cost him everything he held dear. The air in the small house was thick with the scent of sagebrush and lamp oil. The walls a sanctuary of memories, Emma's horse sketches pinned beside Sarah's faded needlework. A tin coffee pot simmering on the stove, Caleb's blacksmith shop loomed outside, its stone walls a testament to the life he'd forged since his wife's death 4 years ago. Copper Ridge, a fragile outpost where desert sands kissed grasslands, slept under a moonlit sky, its saloon and church silent witnesses to the danger creeping closer. The hoofbeats had stilled, but but the torchlight beyond the window danced like a predator's eyes, and Caleb knew Elias Varnell's men weren't here for words. "Stay quiet," Caleb whispered to Emma, his brown eyes steady, despite the storm in his chest. She nodded, her 8-year-old frame tense but resolute. The baby nestled against her, his star-embroidered blanket soft in the lamplight. Caleb's heart ached. She was too young for this, yet her mother's fire burned in her, a courage that both terrified and strengthened him. The knock came again, harder, rattling the oak beam barring the door. Caleb counted to 5, steadying his breath, and opened it just enough to face the man outside. The stranger was younger than expected, perhaps 25. With a lean frame draped in a long duster coat, its hem dusted with desert grit. His face was sharp, his eyes cold as steel under a wide-brimmed hat, and his hand rested casually on a pearl-handled revolver. A silver spur glinted on his boot, marking him as Varnell's enforcer. "Evening, blacksmith," he drawled, his voice smooth but laced with menace. "Name's Hollis. Work for Mr. Varnell. Mind if I step in?" Caleb blocked the doorway, his broad shoulders filling the frame. "It's late, Hollis. What's this about?" His tone was even, but his pulse thrummed, the baby's weight still vivid in his arms from moments ago. Hollis's lips curled into a half-smile, his gaze flicking past Caleb into the house. "Looking for a man who passed through tonight? Desperate type, carrying something valuable. Word is, he was seen near your shop." He leaned closer, his breath sour with tobacco. "You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" Caleb's jaw tightened. The stranger's terror, the note's warning, and the baby's trust flashed through his mind. "Been working late," he said, his voice steady. "Haven't seen anyone. Copper Ridge is quiet this time of night." Eyes narrowed, studying Caleb like a hawk sizing up prey. "Quiet, sure. But trouble has a way of finding places like this." He pushed past Caleb, his boots thudding on the wooden floor, ignoring the protest in Caleb's stance. The enforcer's gaze swept the room. Emma's sketches, the quilts, the lamp casting golden warmth. Emma sat frozen, the baby hidden beneath, a quilt on her lap, her hands clutching her notebook to mask her trembling. "Nice place," Hollis said, his tone mocking. "Cozy for a widower and his girl." He turned to Emma, his smile chilling. "You see any strangers tonight, little one?" Emma's freckled face hardened, her voice clear despite her fear. "No, sir. Just me and Papa, like always." Lie was bold, and Caleb's chest swelled with pride, though fear gnawed at him. Hollis crouched, his duster brushing the floor, his eyes level with hers. "You're a brave one. But kids notice things. A man running, maybe? Carrying something? Small." His hand drifted to his gun, a subtle threat. Caleb stepped forward, his voice low but firm. "She answered you. Now you've seen the place. Time to go." Hollis rose slowly, his smile fading. "Not yet, blacksmith." He paced the room, his boots leaving faint dust trails, and paused by the table where Emma's notebook lay. His fingers traced its edge, then stopped on a tiny blue thread caught in the floorboard, a stitch from the baby's blanket, overlooked in their haste. Caleb's blood ran cold as Hollis picked it up, holding it to the lamplight, his eyes gleaming with suspicion. "Interesting," Hollis murmured, his voice dangerously soft. "This look like doll clothes to you, Sterling?" He turned, his gaze piercing. "Or maybe something a baby might wear." Caleb's hand twitched toward his Colt, but Hollis was faster, his revolver half drawn, a warning in his stance. "Don't play me for a fool," he said. "Varnell's missing something precious, and I reckon it's here." The baby stirred beneath the quilt, a soft whimper escaping, quickly muffled by Emma's gentle rocking. Hollis's head snapped toward the sound, his smile returning, cold and triumphant. "Thought so," he said, stepping toward Emma. Caleb moved, placing himself between Hollis and his daughter, his voice a growl. "You're leaving now, or you won't walk out of here." Hollis chuckled, but his eyes were hard. Big words for a man with a kid to protect. "Varnell don't take kindly to thieves. Sterling, hand over what's his, and maybe you and the girl see tomorrow." The air crackled with tension, the lamp's flame flickering as if sensing the storm within. Caleb's mind raced the stranger's plea, the notes warning the baby's innocent gaze. He was no match for Varnell's empire, but the trust placed in him, the courage in Emma's eyes, forged a resolve stronger than iron. Outside, the torches burned closer, and a shout echoed from the street, one of Hollis's men, calling him to the saloon. Hollis hesitated, his gun still poised, his gaze locked on Caleb, as Hollis's hand tightened on his revolver. A question loomed. Could Caleb outwit Varnell's enforcer, or would the baby's secret be torn from their grasp? The New Mexico moonlight bathed Copper Ridge in silver, but inside Caleb Sterling's adobe home, the air crackled with danger. Varnell's enforcer stood with his revolver half drawn, his cold eyes fixed on the quilt where a baby's whimper had betrayed its hiding place. Caleb blocked the path to Emma, his daughter's auburn curls barely visible as she shielded the infant, her courage a beacon in the lamplight. The note protected him from Varnell weighed heavy in Caleb's vest as torchlight flickered outside. He knew the fight for this child's life had only just begun. The small house was a fortress of memories. Sarah's quilts draped over chairs, Emma's horse sketches pinned to the walls, the scent of lamp oil and sagebrush mingling in the stillness. Caleb's blacksmith shop loomed beyond the window, its stone walls a silent witness to his years of toil since Sarah's fever stole her away. Copper Ridge, nestled where desert met grassland, held its breath, its saloon and church cloaked in shadow under a star-strewn sky. The riders' torches burned closer, their voices sharp in the night.
Ow.
And Caleb's heart pounded. The Colt at his hip, a reminder of a past he'd buried. Hollis's smile was a blade, his silver spur glinting as he stepped toward Emma. Hand over the kid, blacksmith, he said, his voice low and lethal. Varnell's not a patient man, and I ain't keen on dragging this out. Caleb's broad frame tensed, his brown eyes hard as iron. You're not touching her, or the child, he growled, his hand inching toward his gun. Emma sat frozen, the baby hidden beneath the quilt, her small hands clutching her notebook like a shield. Her freckled face was pale, but her gaze held her mother's fire, a defiance that made Caleb's chest ache with pride and fear. Hollis chuckled, his revolver now fully drawn, the barrel gleaming in the lamplight. Brave words, Sterling. You're one man against Varnell's army. The baby's his property, and you're stealing from a man who don't forgive. Property? Caleb's voice rose, his anger flaring. He's a child, not cattle. What kind of man claims a baby with blood and bullets? The stranger's terror, the note's warning, and the baby's trusting gaze fueled his resolve. He didn't know the full truth, but no child deserved to be hunted like prey. Before Hollis could answer, a shout cut through the night from the street. Hollis found tracks by the livery. The enforcer's head snapped toward the window, his focus wavering for a heartbeat. Caleb seized the moment, lunging forward and grabbing Hollis's gun hand, slamming it against the wall. Revolver fired, the shot deafening, splintering the ceiling and raining dust. They grappled, crashing into a table, the oil lamp teetering but holding fast. Hollis was lean and quick, but Caleb fought with a father's fury, driving his elbow into the man's jaw. Hollis staggered, his hat falling, but he swung back, his fist grazing Caleb's cheek. Emma gasped, clutching the baby tighter, her voice a whisper. Papa. The infant whimpered, and Caleb's heart raced. He had to end this before the riders stormed in. With a surge of strength, he pinned Hollis against the wall, wrenching the gun free and pressing it to the enforcer's chest. Get out! Caleb panted, his voice raw. Or you don't leave alive. Hollis's cold eyes burned with rage, but he raised his hands, blood trickling from his lip. You're a dead man, Sterling, he spat. Varnell burned this town to find that kid. He backed toward the door, his spurs scraping the floor, and slipped into the night, his shadow merging with the torchlight outside. Caleb barred the door, his breath ragged, the gun heavy in his hand. He turned to Emma, who was trembling but unharmed, the baby now quiet in her arms. You okay, darlin'? He asked, kneeling beside her, his calloused hand brushing her curls. She nodded, tears glinting in her eyes. I was scared, Papa, but we kept him safe." Her voice held a strength that humbled him, a spark of Sarah's spirit. Caleb took the baby, its dark eyes meeting his, and felt a vow solidify. The child's blanket, embroidered with stars, was soft against his rough hands, a reminder of the love that had driven the stranger to such desperation. But Hollis's words echoed Varnell's property. Why did a cattle baron hunt an infant with such ferocity? The note offered no answers. Only a named a warning that Caleb couldn't ignore. "We can't stay here," Caleb said, rising. He opened a trunk by the hearth, pulling out a leather satchel and stuffing it with essentials: bread, a canteen, a blanket for Emma, his colt. Long retired, felt alive again, its way to grim necessity. He glanced at the window where the riders' torches still burned, their voices now near the stables. Varnell's men wouldn't stop, and Copper Ridge was no longer safe. "Papa, where are we going?" Emma asked, slipping her notebook into her coat, her small frame ready to follow him into the unknown. "To the old barn by Willow Creek," Caleb said, his mind racing. The barn, a mile out, was abandoned, hidden by cottonwoods, a place to hide until he could unravel Varnell's pursuit. "We'll figure this out, darlin', I promise." They slipped out the back door, the night cool and sharp, the grasslands whispering under a starlit sky. Caleb carried the baby, Emma close at his side, her hand in his. The town's lights faded behind them, but the riders' torches moved like wolves, circling closer. As they reached the edge of Copper Ridge, a figure stepped from the shadows. A man, wounded and staggering, his voice a desperate rasp. "Sterling." "Don't give him up," he croaked, clutching his side, blood seeping through his torn shirt. It was the stranger, alive but barely, his eyes pleading as the stranger collapsed. Caleb faced a truth. Could he unravel Varnell's secret before the riders found them, or would their flight end in the desert's embrace? The New Mexico night enveloped Copper Ridge, its stars a silent witness to the danger stalking Caleb Sterling and his daughter, Emma. They stood at the town's edge, the baby's soft weight in Caleb's arms, the note protect him from Varnell. Burning vow in his vest, the stranger, bloodied and broken, had collapsed before them, his plea to save the child echoing in the desert air. As torchlight flickered closer, marking Varnell's relentless hunters, Caleb felt the weight of a promise that could forge a new path or lead them all to ruin. The grasslands whispered under a moonlit sky, their sagebrush scent mingling with the sharp tang of blood from the stranger's wounds. Copper Ridge's adobe buildings faded behind them, saloon's creaking sign and the church's crooked steeples swallowed by darkness. Caleb's blacksmith shop, a beacon of his hard-won life, stood silent, its stone walls no match for Elias, Varnell's wrath. Emma clung to Caleb's hand, her auburn curls catching the starlight, her freckled face etched with fear but lit by a courage that reminded Caleb of Sarah, gone for years now. The baby, swaddled in his star-embroidered blanket, cooed softly, his dark eyes trusting, unaware of the storm closing in. "Papa." "He's hurt bad," Emma whispered, her voice trembling as she knelt beside the stranger, her small hand hovering over his torn shirt. The man's gaunt face was pale, his breaths shallow. But his eyes burned with a desperate resolve. Caleb knelt, supporting the stranger's shoulder, his brown eyes scanning the horizon where torches bobbed like wolf's eyes. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice low but urgent. "Why's Varnell after this child?" The stranger coughed, blood flecking his lips, his voice a rasp. "Names." "Samuel Reed." "That boy's my son Jacob Varnell. He'll kill to claim him." His hand clutched Caleb's arm, weak but fierce. "You're a father. I saw it. Save him, please." Caleb's heart stuttered, the baby's warmth against his chest a stark contrast to Samuel's fading strength. "Why Varnell? What's this boy to him?" The note's warning loomed, but answers were as scarce as rain in the desert. Samuel's eyes dimmed, but he forced the words out. "Jacob's Varnell's grandson. My wife, Clara, his daughter, she loved me, a nobody, a teacher. Varnell forbade it, locked her away. We ran, married in secret, but she died birthing Jacob Varnell. He wants the boy to mold him, to own him." His voice broke, tears mixing with blood. "He'll brand him, break him. I couldn't let that happen. Emma gasped, her small hand covering her mouth. Brand him? She whispered, her eyes wide with horror, the baby stirring in Caleb's arms. Caleb's jaw tightened, a cold fury. Rising, he'd heard tales of Varnell's cruelty, cattle branded, men broken but a child. The thought turned his stomach. Why'd you come to me? He asked, his voice rough, the colt at his hip a heavy reminder of the fight ahead. You, with your girl? Samuel panted. A man who loves like that, he'd fight for what's right. He reached into his torn coat, pulling out a locket, its silver glinting. Clara's, give it to Jacob. When he's older, tell him his ma loved him. Caleb took the locket, its weight a promise, his mind racing. Varnell's empire was a shadow over New Mexico, his riders a scourge. Blacksmith, even one with a gun, was no match for that power. Yet Jacob's trust, Emma's bravery, and Samuel's sacrifice kindled a fire in Caleb's heart, a resolve to protect what was pure. As he'd failed to protect Sarah from fever's grasp, Papa, they're coming. Poning. To the torches, now weaving through the grasslands, their light glinting off rifles. The riders' shouts grew louder, Hollis's voice among them, sharp and vengeful after their fight in the house. Caleb lifted Samuel, the man's weight slight, but heavy with meaning. We're getting you to the barn by Willow Creek, he said, his voice firm. You're not dying yet. The barn, hidden by cottonwoods a mile out, was their only hope, a place to hide, to plan. To unravel Varnell's pursuit, Emma gathered her coat, tucking her notebook inside, her small frame ready for the unknown. Caleb led them into the grasslands, the baby secure in his arms, Samuel stumbling beside him, Emma's hand in his. The night was cool, the stars a vast canopy, but danger pressed close, the riders' torches like flames in a dragon's maw. They reached the creek, its waters murmuring under cottonwood shadows. The barn's weathered planks looming like a fragile sanctuary inside. The air was musty, thick with hay and old leather. Caleb set Samuel on a straw pile, his wounds oozing, while Emma lit a small lantern, its glow soft but revealing. The baby, Jacob, fussed, and Emma rocked him gently, her voice a soothing hum of Sarah's lullaby. Caleb tore his shirt to bind Samuel's wounds, his hands steady but his mind a storm. Varnell's grandson Jacob was no ordinary child, but a prize in a tyrant's game. Why brand a boy? What darkness drove Varnell to claim his own blood with? Such cruelty? Samuel gripped Caleb's wrist, his voice faint. Varnell, he killed Clara, not with his hands, but his pride. Refused her a doctor, said she shamed him. Don't let him take Jacob. His eyes fluttered, his strength fading, but his plea lingered like a vow. Caleb's chest tightened, a memory of Sarah's fevered face flashing through him. He'd been helpless then, but now, with Emma and Jacob depending on him, he couldn't falter. Rest, he said, his voice gruffed with emotion. We'll keep him safe. Outside, the hoofbeats slowed, the riders' voices sharp in the night. Hollis's shout pierced the darkness. They're close. Check the creek, and Caleb's blood ran cold. The barn was no fortress, its walls thin against Varnell's wrath. As the riders' torches lit the cottonwoods, Caleb faced a reckoning. Could he honor Samuel's dying wish? Or would Varnell's shadow claim them all? The New Mexico night clung to the old barn by Willow Creek, its weathered planks trembling under the weight of danger. Caleb Sterling crouched in the shadows, the baby Jacob's soft breaths warm against his chest. The locket from Samuel Rita, dying father's plaguey in his pocket. Beside him, Emma's auburn curls gleamed faintly in the lantern's glow, her freckled face set with a courage that pierced Caleb's heart.
Outside.
Elias Varnell's riders circled, their torches casting fiery streaks through the cottonwoods, and Hollis's voice cut the darkness like a blade as the hoofbeats closed in. Caleb knew the fight for Jacob's life would demand every ounce of his soul. The barn's air was thick with the musty scent of hay and old leather, its rafters creaking, as if whispering secrets of forgotten winters. Moonlight slipped through gaps in the walls, painting the straw-strewn floor in silver. Copper Ridge lay a mile away, its adobe homes and crooked church steeple lost in the night. A world apart from the danger now at their door, Caleb's blacksmith shop, his sanctuary since Sarah's death, felt like a distant dream. Its stone walls no shield against Varnell's empire. Emma knelt by Samuel, the wounded stranger, her small hands pressing a cloth to his bleeding side. Her voice a soft hum of Sarah's lullaby to soothe both him and Jacob. The baby, swaddled in his star-embroidered blanket, stirred his dark eyes, blinking with innocent trust, unaware of the storm raging outside. Papa was getting weaker, Emma whispered, her eyes wide with fear, but steady, her 8-year-old heart carrying a burden too heavy for her years. Samuel's gaunt face was ashen, his breath shallow, but his gaze clung to Jacob. A father's love defying death. Caleb's brown eyes hardened, his calloused hand brushing the colt at his hip. "Keep pressure on the wound, darlin'," he said, his voice low but firm. He moved to a crack in the barn wall, peering out. The riders 6, maybe 7 fanned out, their torches blazing, rifles glinting. Hollis, Varnell's enforcer, stood tall in his duster coat, his silver spur catching the firelight as he barked orders. "Check the barn. They're here, I can smell it." Mesa, his voice dripped with vengeance, the fight in Caleb's house still. Raw on his bloodied lip, Caleb's mind raced. Samuel's words echoing Varnell, killed Clara, wants to brand Jacob, mold him. The thought of a child, his own flesh, marked like cattle fueled a fury Caleb hadn't known since Sarah's fever stole her away. He'd been helpless then, but now, with Emma's courage and Jacob's life in his hands, he'd fight to his last breath. The locket in his pocket, Clara's keepsake, was a vow to honor Samuel's sacrifice to shield Jacob from Varnell's cruelty. But the barn was no fortress, its walls thin, and the riders were closing in. "Samuel, can you move?" Caleb asked, kneeling beside the man, his voice urgent. The stranger's eyes fluttered, his hand reaching weakly for Jacob. "Not far," Samuel rasped, blood seeping through Emma's cloth. "But you, take him. South, to Clara's kin, in Las Cruces, her Aunt Maria. She raised him free." His voice cracked, tears carving paths through the grime. "Tell Jacob, loved him." Caleb nodded, his throat tight, the weight of Samuel's trust forging a new purpose. Las Cruces was a week's ride through bandit country, a perilous journey with a baby and a child. The alternative, surrendering Jacob to Varnell's branding iron, was unthinkable. "We'll get him there," he promised, his hand gripping Samuel's shoulder. Emma's small voice cut through the tension. "Papa, they're at the door!" Her eyes darted to the barn's entrance where shadows moved. The creak of boots loud against the gravel. Caleb doused the lantern, plunging the barn into darkness save for slivers of moonlight. He lifted Jacob, securing the baby against his chest, and pulled Emma close, her notebook tucked inside her coat. "Stay behind me," he whispered, guiding them to a corner piled with hay bales, a fragile shield. Samuel tried to rise but collapsed, his breaths fading, his gaze fixed on his son. The barn door shuddered under a heavy blow, wood splintering as Hollis's voice boomed. "Sterling, hand over the kid or we burn this place down." A torch flared through a gap, its heat searing, the threat no bluff. Caleb's heart pounded, his Colt drawn now, its weight a grim comfort. He'd hung it up after Sarah's death, vowing peace for Emma. But peace was a luxury Varnell's men didn't allow. "Papa, I'm scared," Emma whispered, her hand clutching his, but her voice held a spark of defiance. "We can't let them hurt Jacob." Caleb's chest swelled with pride, his brown eyes meeting hers in the dark. "We won't, darlin'. You're braver than half the men out there." She pressed the locket into her hand. "Keep this safe for Jacob." Her small fingers closed around it, a vow of her own. The door buckled again, and Caleb braced for a fight, his mind flashing to Sarah her smile, her strength, her belief in him. He'd failed her, but he wouldn't fail Emma or Jacob. He aimed, his Colt at the door, ready to fire, when a new sound pierced the night hooves. Urgent but different, not Varnell's men. Shouts followed, chaotic, and Hollis's voice faltered. "Who's that? Hold your ground." Caleb risked a glance through the crack. A lone rider galloped into view, his horse lathered, his silhouette familiar even in the torchlight. "Sheriff, Amos Tate, Copper Ridge's lawman, his badge glinting. Hollis, Amos barked, reining in. What's this ruckus? Varnell's men tearing up my town. Hollis spat, his revolver raised. Stay out of this, Sheriff. We're here for what's ours. Amos dismounted, his weathered face stern, his hand on his gun. Ain't yours till I say so. I heard shots, saw your men sniffing around Sterling's shop. Explain yourself. Caleb's breath caught. Amos was fair, but Varnell's gold reached deep. Could he trust the sheriff, or was this a trap? Samuel's faint groan pulled him back, the man's life slipping away. Jacob fussed, and Emma hushed him, her lullaby a fragile thread in the chaos. Hollis's voice grew sharp. Sterling's hiding a thief's kid? Varnell's grandson? Hand him over, or we take him by force. Amos's eyes narrowed, his gaze flicking to the barn. Varnell's grandson? That's a tall claim. I'll talk to Sterling myself. He stepped toward the door, but Hollis blocked him, his men closing ranks, rifles ready. Caleb's pulse thundered. Amos's arrival bought time, but the barn was surrounded. Samuel dying, and Jacob's cries could betray them any moment. The locket in Emma's hand, the note in his vest, and the baby's trust forged a resolve stronger than fear. As Amos faced Hollis's men, Caleb gripped his Colt. A question burning. Could the sheriff be their salvation, or would Varnell's shadow consume them all? The New Mexico dawn crept over Willow Creek, its golden light piercing the cottonwood shadows that cloaked the old barn. Caleb Sterling stood resolute, his Colt steady, the baby Jacob's soft warmth against his chest, and Emma's auburn curls. A beacon of courage beside him. Samuel Reed lay dying, his plea to save his son from Elias Varnell echoing in the musty air. Outside, Sheriff Amos Tate faced Varnell's enforcer Hollis as torches blazed and rifles gleamed. The fate of an innocent child hanging in the balance. As the barn door shuddered under the rider's threat, Caleb braced for a stand that would forge a legacy of love and valor. The barn's weathered planks groaned, its hay-strewn floor silvered by moonlight slipping through cracks. The scent of old leather and sagebrush hung heavy, a reminder of the fragile sanctuary they'd found. Copper Ridge, a mile away, slept under a starlit sky, its adobe homes and crooked church steeple distant from the danger at their door. Caleb's blacksmith shop, his haven since Sarah's death, was a memory now, its stone walls, no shield against Varnell's empire. Emma, 8 but wise beyond her years, clutched Clara's locket, her freckled face set with determination as she hummed a lullaby to soothe Jacob. His star-embroidered blanket soft in the dim lantern glow, Hollis's voice boomed, sharp with rage. Sterling, last chance hand over Varnell's grandson, or we burn you out. The barn door splintered under a heavy blow, and Caleb's brown eyes hardened, his gray-streaked hair damp with sweat. Samuel, propped against a hay bale, coughed weakly, blood staining Emma's cloth, his gaze fixed on Jacob with a father's unbreakable love. Sheriff Amos's voice cut through the chaos, firm but measured. Hollis, stand down. No bloods. Spilling till I hear Sterling sighed. His badge glinted, his weathered face a mask of resolve, but Caleb's heart reached Amos was fair, but Varnell's gold ran deep. Could he trust the law, or was this a delay before doom? Caleb whispered to Emma, stay low, darlin'. She nodded, her small hand gripping the locket, Jacob quiet in her arms, stepped toward the door, Colt raised, and called out, Amos, I'm coming out to talk. No tricks. He pushed the door open, its hinges groaning, and faced the night, his broad frame silhouetted against the torchlight. Hollis sneered, his duster coat flapping, his revolver aimed. Talk's cheap, blacksmith. That kid's Varnell's blood is air. You're a thief, Sterling. His men 6, rifles ready formed a semicircle. Their faces hard but uneasy under Amos's gaze. Amos raised a hand, his voice steady. Varnell's heir? That's a bold claim, Hollis. Why's a cattle baron, hunting a baby with guns and fire? His eyes flicked to Caleb, searching for truth. Caleb's voice was raw but unwavering. This child Jacob was given to me by his "Father," Samuel read, "to protect from Varnell." "Samuel's dying in there," says. "Varnell killed his wife, Clara's own daughter, for loving a man he didn't choose. Now he wants Jacob to brand him, own him like cattle." He held up the note, its scrawl clear in the firelight. "This says protect him from Varnell. I reckon that's my duty now." Hollis laughed, cold and bitter. "Lies from a coward. Jacob's Varnell's legacy, and you're stealing it." But his men shifted, doubt flickering in their eyes. Amos's face darkened. "Branding a child? That's a devil's work, Hollis. Let's see the boy and Samuel." He stepped forward, but Hollis blocked him, his gun rising. "Stay out, Sheriff," Hollis snarled. "Varnell's orders don't bend for badges." Before Amos could reply, a small voice rang out, clear and fearless. "No." Emma stepped from the barn, Jacob in her arms, her auburn curls glowing, her eyes blazing with Sarah's fire. "You're not taking him." The sight of an 8-year-old defying armed men stunned the riders, their rifles lowering slightly. "Emma, get back!" Caleb shouted, his heart lurching, but she stood firm. Jacob's dark eyes wide in her embrace. "He's just a baby," Emma said, her voice carrying across the night. "His mama loved him. His papa's dying for him. And you want to hurt him? Because you're scared of Mr. Varnell. That's not right." She held up Clara's locket, its silver catching the torchlight. This was his mama's. She wanted him free, not owned. Hollis's face twisted, but Amos seized the moment, his gun drawn. "Lower your weapons, Hollis. This ain't a fight you win." His deputies, arriving on horseback, flanked him, their rifles trained on Varnell's men. The riders hesitated, their loyalty wavering under Emma's words and Amos's authority from the barn. Samuel staggered out, supported by a beam, his voice faint but fierce. "Varnell killed Clara, refused her a doctor, shamed her for loving me. Don't let him take my boy." He collapsed, his hand reaching for Jacob, his eyes dimming. Caleb rushed to Samuel, but the man's breath stilled, his sacrifice complete. Rage and grief surged in Caleb's chest, and he faced Hollis, his Colt steady. "You heard him. Varnell's no grandfather, he's a murderer. Jacob stays free." Hollis's men exchanged glances, some lowering their rifles, their faces etched. With doubt, Amos stepped forward, his voice commanding. "Hollis, you're done. Ride out or you're under arrest." The sheriff's deputies closed in, and Hollis, outnumbered, spat in the dirt, his spur glinting as he mounted his horse. "This ain't over, Sterling," he growled, but his men followed, their torches fading into the grasslands. The fight drained from them as dawn broke. Golden light bathed Copper Ridge, its adobe homes glowing with new hope. Amos took Samuel's body to town for burial, vowing to investigate Varnell's crimes. Caleb and Emma, with Jacob, returned to their blacksmith shop, the baby fed and safe. Clara's locket now around Emma's neck, as a promise kept. Caleb forged a new horseshoe, his hammer ringing with purpose. While Emma sketched Jacob's face, her art a vow to remember. Their stand against Varnell reflected the spirit of the 1880s American West, where ordinary folks, blacksmiths, children defied power to protect the innocent. The frontier taught that courage and love could forge communities stronger than any empire, a lesson that resonates today. If Caleb and Emma's valor touched you, hit that like button to show your support and subscribe for more tales of heart. In grit, ring the bell to join our frontier family. Your love keeps these stories alive. As Caleb and Emma faced the new day, a question lingered. Would Varnell's shadow return, or had their courage carved a path to peace?